Right, it is Friday morning, the 25th. It's like about 9 a.m. Most people here are still asleep. I'm actually in Las Vegas at Eric Froehlich's house testing for the Pro Tour. Most people, stay up late and get up late. So, but anyway, I'm actually I've been up for a little while. LSV's up in the kitchen cooking breakfast, and we've been doing a lot of testing for a while now. A lot of the guys have been here for about a week. I've actually been here since Wednesday, so for a few days. Gotten a reasonable number of drafts and played a bunch of constructed, and so far, bleh. The constructed format has been pretty well established. Standard is what it is. It's been what it has been for a while now. We've seen the same sort of established decks be successful over the course of the past year or so. Mono blue and mono black devotion have sort of been the major decks of the environment since about the Pro Tour when Theros came out, and the sets in between haven't done a ton to shake things up. Right now, just the established decks are so powerful and consistent that finding things that are able to compete with them effectively is a challenge. And thus far, we haven't really found a ton of decks that we're super happy with that have great game against, the field in general. So, there's still a week left. And we're still working on it. There's a couple decks that we have that are pretty cool, I think. There's a Boros aggro deck, basically mono red splashing for Boros Charm Chain to the Rocks that gets a bit better with Battlefield Forge, and also the Stoke the Flames from M15 is a pretty powerful card for that kind of deck. You can be a removal spell, or more importantly, just 4 damage to the face. So between that and Boros Charm, you have a lot of ways to finish people off after getting in some early damage with your creatures. I've put together a number of green decks, shockingly. The first one that I tried was just an aggressive green-black deck. I thought that Llanowar Wastes might, do a lot to help the sort of mana situation of that deck, which helps it a lot in general. Being able to cast Experiment 1 or Elvish Mystic on the first turn more consistently is really a big deal. But so is Lifebane Zombie. Lifebane Zombie remains a big deal for anyone who's actually looking to attack with green creatures, and ultimately after a few games of getting Lifebane Zombie, I abandoned that one. So right now my next sort of steps, I'm looking at sort of less aggressive decks, sort of mid-range black-green deck, Jund deck. I'm building Constellation again. I think Constellation is potentially has a lot of power to it. I think that Big Garrick, I guess biggest Garrick, I've actually been calling him extra large Garrick, because there's Garrick 4, there was Garrick 5, and he was Big Garrick. There's Garrick 6, and he was Big Garrick. And now there's Garrick 7, and then I figure he's a little more than Big Garrick. He's extra large. But it's a sort of card that gives a lot of power to a deck that is able to generate that much mana to sort of close out the game against a lot of things. In that sort of spot, I've had a bunch of different cards. I had Elspeth in the junk versions. I had Primeval Bounty in the just the black-green versions, and I'm going to try Garrick. I think it's probably more powerful against any of the non-mono black decks than Bounty is. Bounty is insane against mono black because they can't interact with it, but it can take a long time to get going, which could be a little too weak against other decks. So we'll see. Other than that, still working on exploring different things. Generally, how it works is people will have a certain deck that they're trying out, trying to tune, and ultimately, we hopefully get to the same deck. There's Evo's dog barking. Hopefully to the same deck before too long, and can work together to tune it. So, but right now, I don't think any of us really like any decks, and that's sort of what can happen in a standard format that has so long to evolve and stabilize. And this one certainly has. We haven't seen a ton of change since Theros, really. So I'll be happy when those cards are gone, and when Lifebane Zombie is gone. But for now, that's the world we live in, and I'm going to work to break it wide open. We'll see. So I'll be back with more video logs. I'm actually going out tonight. There's a tritonal show, one of my favorite DJs at a club in Vegas. So can't work all the time, but anyway, for now I got to. So I'm going to get back to work. I will keep you updated.
See
So it is now Sunday morning. Testing is going okay. I've dismissed a lot of decks that I don't want to play. I spent a lot of yesterday playing Jund monsters, and I went through a bunch of different iterations of the deck. Eventually, just sort of came to the conclusion that I don't like any of the monsters. I think that right now the standard format is pretty hostile to just big creatures and like ramping into big creatures. It's pretty bad against both mono black and mono blue because against like Thoughtseize, a bunch of removal spells and Desecration Demon that's bigger than all your monsters, and Lifebane Zombie of course. Black is very easily able to deal with a lot of what you're trying to do, and your deck becomes fairly weak. And to combat that, I was trying to play a very heavy Planeswalker version. I was playing Xenagos and Chandra and Domri, and interestingly, I found that most of that was what was the best things that were going on in the deck, and I was like, okay, well, I can sideboard and play more Planeswalkers, and then I was sort of questioning why the deck was built how it was in the first place, if that was my goal against those decks. Similarly, against mono blue, you're playing against Tidebinder Mage and Rapid Hybridization, and against Massive Waves, and against both black and blue, you really want removal because killing Desecration Demon is really important, and killing Massive Waves is really important. So I was like, well, why is my deck not just like built around these Planeswalkers and removal spells to begin with? That was sort of the direction that I was heading. Interestingly, when I sort of found the Jund Planeswalker deck that was doing very well at the Sarsi Games Standard Open. So that is sort of the basis that I'm working from right now, because I was looking at it and I'm like, oh, these are all the things that I have wanted to be doing anyway. I had my deck with Xenagos and Chandra, and had previously had a deck that actually had all those and Big Garrick, but was more sort of creature focused. Still had like Polukranos or Desecration Demon depending on the version, and was the direction that I was headed. And right now that's sort of where I'm looking. I think that something like that has a lot of potential. It's very sort of similar to a lot of other decks that I have played in the past, like the green-black mid-range decks and some actual Jund mid-range decks, and I like it structurally what's going on. Xenagos is super powerful. I think that Xenagos is a card that has largely been kind of overlooked, not really overlooked necessarily, but has not been as appreciated as it could be because the only decks that have played it have been those that sort of had vulnerabilities in sort of other areas. Like the red, green, and Jund monster type decks. I just think that they're not particularly well positioned against, like as I was saying, the sort of core of the metagame right now. And Xenagos has really only seen play in those decks for the most part. And we've actually been messing around with a number of Xenagos decks. There's in addition to Jund Planeswalkers, there's a Naya deck. Sort of tries to maximize the effectiveness of the mana production of Xenagos because it's just super powerful. One of the most powerful things you can do is kill someone's early guy so they can't kill Xenagos for whatever way, and then use Xenagos mana to like overload them mortars and kill their team, and now you're suddenly ahead with like Planeswalker in play. And so yeah, I am feeling pretty good about the potential of this deck, and it's funny to me because the deck doing well at the SCG is so very much on the same sort of direction that I was heading with the decks that I was working on. That on the one hand, it's pretty cool to have this sort of basis to compare my thoughts with and everything. And the other, there's the issue of, oh, well, okay, is this now a strategy that a lot of people are going to be aware of, and what does that mean for what I sort of need to do? Right now, I think the deck's actually in the semifinals, and if that deck wins, then it's the same sort of deck that I am interested in playing. You end up with some interesting questions there of, whether what sort of changes other people might make to their decks, to combat it. If other people are going to play similar sort of deck, I don't care at all whether people, whether I get credit for the deck that I end up playing, in terms of designing it, or if people think, whoever built it. I think it's Barry Smith who's in the top 8 with that deck right now. But anyway, it's interesting, the implications, all the sort of timing matters that go into testing for the Pro Tour. I think that a lot of times, having the Star City event right before the Pro Tour can have a pretty serious effect on how people approach their deck building and playtesting process. It's interesting. So anyway, I actually didn't go to Dash Berlin last night. I had my friends who I went with to Tritonal on Friday. I also went to Dash Berlin last night. Another DJ I'm a huge fan of, but I decided to be responsible and stay in after Friday night when I was supposed to crash at Ben Stark's hotel room on the Strip, which he never got around to putting my name on. So I ended up having to take a cab back to Efros at like 5 a.m. after walking over to Caesar's Palace and trying to get into Ben Stark's hotel room. So that was fun. But yeah, anyway, things have been going reasonably well, and I'm having some fun. So well, hopefully both of those continue. So. All right, so it is Tuesday night, and I think if you learn anything from this sort of video log series, it's just how chaotic and erratic the testing can be leading up to a Pro Tour. We were testing the Jund sort of mid-range Planeswalker deck that I alluded to in the last recording for about a day, and then sort of we ended up getting off of it because basically it felt like it was more or less just a worse version of black. More or less, you were a deck that was reliant on drawing the right sort of mix of stuff in the early game, and had worse mana, took more damage, had more sort of expensive spells and stuff than just playing mono black, and didn't have the ability to take the same sort of proactive lines with cards like Pack Rat and Demon and everything that black could. So ultimately, I ended up sort of moving into wanting to try more aggressive decks. It's sort of the kind of decks that I generally prefer, and I also think are typically a better place to be in a lot of different fields. I think that this is a pretty defined format, which means that you don't necessarily have the same kind of natural inclination to play aggressive decks that I think is usually correct, because I think that control and mid-range type strategies in a lot of those formats, you just generally want to be proactive more than aggressive specifically. And I've been was messing around with green black some more, and then sort of was like, why am I not just playing green white? A lot of the black cards that you end up wanting, things like Doomblade or Ultimate Price, Putrefy, or whatever, are able to be sort of at least counterfeited by white cards. There's Vanishing Light, there's Selesnya Charm, and I took a look at the green-white deck that won the most recent SVG and also finished second place in the previous Open, and sort of asking myself why is this not the sort of deck that I might want to try. So I was playing around with it, and I think the deck is actually quite powerful. I think the deck is very good against black decks, against control decks. It's certainly very bad against mono blue, and I think that it's a solvable problem. Not necessarily that you can make the matchup overall positive for you, but that you can make it less bad. I think that the absolute best card by miles is Citizen Tactics. I've seen a lot of these versions of green-white have one copy of Tactics in their sideboard, and I think that you just want 4, because the ability to kill Tie Butter Mage, the ability to kill Master of Waves, and just often just wrath your opponent's board, but with just fighting with your cheap creatures, is really, really powerful and gives you sort of an angle to win games that you just don't otherwise have. So while Skylasher is pretty good, it's no Citizen Tactics. Skylasher is a card that they can beat more often than not, I've actually found, because they can just do more powerful things than that. Your Skylasher is not going to beat Master of Waves. Your Skylasher is not going to beat overloaded Cyclonic Rift, because they just present a bunch of permanents. Whereas Citizen Tactics can wipe their board clean and allow you to actually win the game. So that's the direction that I'm looking at. Also looking at sort of playing more like Brave Naya style, though that deck I don't like as much right now. I think that a lot of the individual threats in that deck are just weaker, and the deck plays a lot more combo-like, which means that you are heavily reliant on drawing specific cards. If you don't draw Brave the Elements, you basically stand no chance against a lot of decks. It feels like, because your creatures are just worse than a lot of the other options. And similarly, I think that in matchups where Brave the Elements is not good, you end up in a lot of trouble, like against opponents who just have 2 colors worth of creatures. I think that you're really reliant on your opponent. Sometimes even your opponent has like a Mutavault or 2. They can just end up blocking and stopping your Brave from being good. So that's really where we're at right now. We just had our sort of limited discussion where we go over all of the cards in the set and sort of rank them, at least in context with the top commons. We all feel pretty strongly that Triplicate Spirits is by far the best common, followed by Lightning Strike, and then it gets a little bit more confusing. And that even a lot of the uncommons and rares are not as good as Triplicate Spirits. I think that card it's bonkers to me that that's a common. I remember when Spectral Procession was an uncommon, and it was one of the best uncommons, and now this is just not the same card, but a very similar card at common. So we'll see how it goes. I definitely think that white's the best color, probably followed by red. Blue is, I think, the worst by like a fair margin, and green is probably my 3rd favorite color, and then black 4th. Blue is pretty terrible, it seems. Which is, a nice follow-up to the last core set where it was unbelievably powerful, so we'll see. But yeah, I feel pretty comfortable in both, in the draft. I feel less comfortable, not that I don't feel comfortable constructed, but I'm just less sure of what I want to be doing in constructed. I think the green-white deck is pretty strong. I don't know if the Naya deck is better. But I got 2 days now left to figure it out. Really a day, because Thursday is lost in travel and everything. So if the Pro Tour right now, I'd be playing green white, just because I feel like it's the sort of deck that I have a lot of experience with, and I think that is solid against a wide range of stuff. Certainly has weaknesses, but is definitely a place I feel comfortable. So anyway, I will check in at least once more before the Pro Tour starts, and we'll see how it goes. Oh my god, where's the stop button? Van S, hard at work, as usual.
Yeah, against that deck, I don't think you guys have to play him then.
What is good against that?
6-3. You were 8. Yeah. Oh, too late.
Can't play around that.
I'm gonna take your all gold black creatures. 16.
Here is Eric Froelich's pool, where we've been playing pool basketball, which Shahar is totally unfairly good at because he's, way taller than everyone else. And Luis and Raptor are both incredibly aggressive defenders and have, nearly drowned and injured each other and everyone else. These are the sleeping arrangements that I've been in this week. That's my lovely air mattress on the right, and then over there is where Player of the Year Josh Utter-Layton has been sleeping, along with the monitor he bought, so he could actually use his laptop with a broken screen. So yeah, super fancy accommodations here. Nothing but the best. So it is Thursday night. The Pro Tour starts in the morning, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling ready. I just finished sleeving up my deck right here. As I said last time, I'm playing green-white aggro, which I think is a very powerful deck. It's unusual that I find myself in a situation where I'm playing, a sort of stock deck in a big event. But I think that this is a deck that a lot of people have underrated. I think it's a deck that is
it's a sort of deck that when it performs, a lot of people discount it as just some green aggro deck. But I've been playing the deck a lot over the past week or so, and I think it's very powerful. I do have one sort of bit of tech as a sideboard card, which is not really itself a bit of tech, but the number I'm playing I think is unusual. I have 4 copies of Citizen Tactics. I think this is a big deal in terms of giving the deck a lot of ways to interact that it doesn't otherwise have. For instance, against mono blue, a terrible matchup in game 1. A lot of people just have Skylasher after sideboarding, but Skylasher is only, it only keeps you alive a little bit, doesn't even really kill your opponent all that well when they have stuff like Rapid Hybridization and Mutavault and things like that to block it, Domestication to take your creatures to block. It just isn't high impact enough, whereas Citizen Tactics is frequently Wrath You. And that's pretty good. Be able to kill, Tiebinder Mage or Master of Waves and just wipe out their board. It comes in handy from time to time, believe it or not. So I think I'm the only person on the team who's actually playing the deck, which, not the first time, won't be the last. I have a tendency to, build my own sort of decks and go with them. Though, as I said, this isn't really my brew or anything. This is, my take on a pretty established archetype, but one that I think is very powerful. I think that the matchups against black are actually quite good. The various black decks. I think that Lifebane Zombie is powerful against you, clearly, but a lot of your tools are actually pretty good in the, sort of the dynamics against the decks in which Lifebane Zombie exists. Like against mono black, Voice of Resurgence is super good. Having a bunch of 1-drops that you can play out that sort of off-tempo them in terms of their ability to use their removal is really good. Selesnya Charm gives you an easy answer to Desecration Demon. Banishing Light also. And the fact that Advent of the Worm, your big threat, can't be taken by Zombie ends up being a really big deal in sort of giving you the gas that you need, the tools to win games despite getting zombied. So the sideboard there is much less exciting, much less interesting, I think. There a couple copies of God's Willing, which is fairly standard, and then a Ajani, Mentor of Heroes. I have like a Ajani theme deck. I have 3 different Ajanis in my deck, but he's my pal, okay? But I think that overall that matchup ends up being actually pretty good. And then control decks, you have a bunch of instant speed creatures. You have Voice of Resurgence. I think ends up being a good matchup as well. You are a little soft to decks like Mono Green Devotion that just kind of go bigger than you, that you don't have a ton of interaction. But there, Citizen Tactics is very powerful. And I also have a couple of copies of Hunt the Hunter in my sideboard to break up the early mana creatures, kill Courser of Krufix and things like that. So I think the deck really has the tools to be really competitive. It's very good against like aggressive red decks, which I think that a number of other people on the team are actually playing, which is amusing because they always kind of give me a bit of shit about like playing decks that are good against the decks that they're playing. Which I tend to play decks that are good against what I perceive the field to be, and in a lot of cases, a lot of other members of the team are playing decks that fall into that category. So. Anyway, I've been set on playing this deck before. Most of them even switched to playing aggressive red decks, so they can't blame me for any of that. It's their own fault. We're walking right into it. But yeah, overall, I think the deck is very strong. I do think that the blue matchup is fairly weak, but gets reasonable after sideboarding with a bunch of Citizen Tactics. And I think that your just ability to compete with a lot of sort of unknown decks, which is a very important factor, even in a format that is as established as the current standard is really important, just because the deck is powerful and proactive. You are doing something which puts a lot of pressure on opponent very quickly, and if they're playing some, like reactive, mid-rangey sort of strategy, even if it's not something they're specifically prepared for, you can just attack them and kill them. And that's something I like to do, attack my opponent. So as far as draft is concerned, I feel really comfortable with draft. I've actually done more drafts for this format than I generally do for most Pro Tours. I did a ton of drafts on Magic Online, even though I'm still not a huge fan of the new client. I do like how it works for draft, though. I love the fact that it builds your deck as you go along. But I've been really successful in the drafts, both on Magic Online and our drafts in person. I don't think that the format is particularly deep. I think that there's a lot of fairly intuitive things. Like the cards that look good are mostly the cards that are good, which makes it harder to get an edge in draft. But overall, I've been doing well, and I feel comfortable. I feel like I know the card pool and the tricks and things like that very well. So hoping to have a good performance there as well. So this Pro Tour, I need to have a really good performance in order to really sort of reach my goals. I have not had a great year as far as pro level results go. I only have 21 pro points coming in, which if I weren't in the Hall of Fame would mean that I was in danger of not even being qualified next year. And I mean, I skipped a lot of Grand Prix over the past, even just few months. I didn't play in nearly as many Grand Prix this year as I did last year, less than half easily. Just other commitments and things, and just generally not having as much fun playing in the Grand Prix when they've gotten as big as they have. But whatever, excuses. I need to make the finals of the Pro Tour to actually make platinum, which is quite the feat. It's definitely a challenge, but I've done it before, and who's to say I can't do it again? And I figure once I get there, I might as well win. If I'm going to be in the finals, I should win the tournament because I haven't lost in the finals yet, so. So why not win again? Anyway, we'll see how that goes. So, but I'll be back with more sort of look at my tournament performance tomorrow. Maybe some shots of the tournament as I'm playing in it and things like that. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if I can't get to the finals and get this done. So see you then.
Strategy, but I know it's probably
So it is Friday night after day one of the Pro Tour, and it was a rough day. I had a pretty good draft deck, not great, but not bad. Definitely pretty solid, and unfortunately, I only managed to finish 1 and 2 in draft. There was definitely one game where I could have played a bit differently and might have been able to win. But overall, I felt like I got a little bit unfortunate to finish 1 and 2. But it was a deck that I anticipated going 2 and 1 with. Felt pretty confident I would. And would have had to get a bit lucky to go 3-0, and felt a little like I got a little unlucky to go 1 and 2. But that's magic. Moving on to constructed, I think my deck was great. I ended up actually playing against Green Devotion, which was at least going into the tournament one of the decks that I didn't really want to face. At least I thought I didn't. And I faced it 3 times, and I actually ended up going 2 and 1. And the one loss actually came in a match where I made a number of pretty awful mistakes, and they sort of revolved around my misunderstanding of my opponent's Nissa. My opponent had Nissa, and he made a couple of his lands into creatures, and I tried to use Hunt the Hunter to have one of my creatures fight one of his lands, and it turns out that doesn't make them into green creatures, which I had thought it did. And then I later died because I didn't realize they were trampled. It wasn't because I didn't realize. He actually didn't realize either. But I died because they were tramplers. I didn't realize they were tramplers. There was no way I could play the game particularly differently anyway at that point. But it was pretty awkward to be playing a game at the Pro Tour and have it go so awry. In large part because I just didn't know exactly what a card did. Every time I played against Nissa in playtesting, it was a proxy. And I only really, I was like, oh yeah, it makes 4/4 creatures. It makes lands in 4/4 creatures. I sort of assumed they were green and, didn't realize they had trample. So that's all sort of on me, and I felt pretty dumb after that match. And, it can be tough to, take a difficult loss like that and sort of mentally get back into it. Not only that, but immediately afterwards, I played against Ben Stark, who was playing, red-white aggro, Boros aggro deck, and which is a really good matchup for my deck. And then, game 1, I mulligan, keep a 1-land hand in the draw, don't draw a land, and just die. And then game 2, I mulligan again, and end up keeping a hand that has Mana Confluence as one of the early mana sources, as my only source of that color, and take a reasonable amount of damage from that, and then just draw a bunch of land and lose that way. So it was it was frustrating to lose a match that I felt like I ought to have won. If I just had really understood what the cards did. Obviously I shouldn't have won because I made mistakes as a result. And then go on to just
get pretty unlucky to lose the next one. But I managed to win the last two, so I'm in day 2 at 4-4. It's not a great place to be because, well, I really can't make top 8 from here, and my goal, in any tournament is to win the tournament. We sort of jokingly call, the fact that you can make day 2 at 4-4 now, just making it into purgatory, because you really have to have an incredible record in day 2 to finish with any sort of meaningful result. And particularly at the end of the season, when the pro levels are clearly defined as to what you can get based on whatever sort of result. I can't make platinum anymore. I have to go undefeated tomorrow in order to make top 16, which would give me gold, which is actually better than it used to be. They announced that gold is going to give flights for every event as part of the award, which is meaningful for me, even though I'm in the Hall of Fame. I would definitely like to not have to worry about booking my own flights and paying for my own travel to those events. But we'll see. Regardless of what sort of pro level status I can achieve, I want to do as well as I can in the tournament from here on out. It was a difficult day, and gonna have to bounce back from that. But that's that's magic sometimes. Sometimes things don't really go your way. Sometimes you end up making some sort of big mistake, and it can cost you, and you need to be able to sort of turn around from that and not let it sort of just ruin the rest of your tournament. That's definitely something that was a problem that I had a long time ago when I basically would either make top 8 of a tournament or just do terribly. I had no finishes for a long time. They were actually in the top 32. All my finishes were basically top 8, top 16, or nothing, more or less. And I think a big part of that was that I sort of lost sight of any sort of once I was out of contention for the specific goals that I had, I just kind of lost focus and lost sight of any other possible results that I could put up. And it's difficult because I don't certainly I'm not here to play because I want to make a couple $100 or even a couple $1,000. I'm here because I want to win. And I can't do that anymore, which sucks. But gonna do some more winning, and hopefully it'll turn out all right. So I like the deck that I'm playing a lot. I think that I think that my draft strategy worked out pretty well. My deck was solid, but didn't quite come through. And I really like my constructed deck. I actually think it's a lot stronger in the Green Devotion matchup than I previously really realized. I didn't play a ton of the deck against Green Devotion. I didn't expect it to be a big portion of the field. But Cetizen Tactics has just been incredible. Hunt the Hunter has been excellent, even when I tried to use it on creatures that weren't green. Thought they were, I really did. But yeah, so I will. I'll try and slow down and pay more attention, and well, I would say read my opponent's cards, but it was actually against Su Xingguo, whose card was Chinese, so I couldn't read it if I tried. But if you don't know what something does, even if you think you do, if you're not entirely sure, be sure to call a judge, because that can trip up even those of us here at the Pro Tour. You need to know what things do when you're making your decisions. So I'm going to try and do better tomorrow, and we'll see how it goes. So I'll see you then. So it is Saturday night after day 2 of the Pro Tour, and as you heard in my last video log, I came into day 2 at 4-4. Pretty bad shape, had some rough games yesterday, and managed to turn things around today. I actually went 6-1-1 overall today, and I actually don't even know what my final placing is. I left the site with my girlfriend Natalie to go get dinner before they posted final standings, so I think I may be top 50, certainly top 75 at least. So coming back from 4-4 and being able to post that record, I'm pretty happy with it. I've definitely, as I said yesterday, in a number of occasions, had some trouble sort of recovering from making mistakes and from early losses and things like that, and getting kind of rattled. And I managed to turn things around and put up a really good finish. Really good, really good today at least. But I was really happy with my constructed deck. I basically lost to the mirror match, getting mana screwed and making a horrible mistake. So can't really complain too much about that. I went 3-0 in the draft today. Definitely a good turnaround for my 1-2 finish yesterday. So overall, I can't say I'm happy with how the Pro Tour went in total. Still pretty frustrated with my performance yesterday. I really didn't play as well as I ought to have, and could have certainly done better there. And who knows, if I'd done a little bit better, maybe I could have made top 8, or at least done a little bit better than I ultimately did. But overall, it's nice to have overcome what has been a challenge for me, and that's when I sort of stumble and end up out of contention for a really good finish, I can frequently sort of lose focus, and I managed to avoid doing that this time. I managed to sort of come back from a really bad start to the tournament and still put together a good result. So it's funny saying that with how many tournaments that I've played in, and how sort of, I don't know, commonplace this feels like it ought to be to me, but it's definitely been something that has plagued me my entire Pro Tour career. I have lots of highs and lots of lows, but not too many sort of middle finishes, and those are important to actually put together the points and everything that you need to actually consistently do well. So I didn't make platinum, unfortunately, but I managed to finally have a Pro Tour this year that I'll be getting more than an appearance fee from, and after a really bad start anyway. So I'm really interested to see what things look like next year with all standard Pro Tours. That announcement went out today. I'm gonna write about that, so I don't want to sort of go into that too much in this. But I think that's very interesting. Hopefully, standard is more varied next year. It's not a incredibly similar sort of format that just dead ends like this one did. If you played the same deck that won the first Pro Tour this year in this Pro Tour, it would have been a totally fine deck. A lot of people did pretty much exactly that, which is sort of crazy when you think about it. But I talked to a lot of the guys from Wizards. I talked to Dave Humphries, Aaron Forsyth, and they feel comfortable that they have a plan in place that should avoid that happening again. So while they do make some mistakes sometimes, it's a group of really smart people, and I respect the work that they do, and have confidence that they can do things right if they have their mind to it. So anyway. This is going to be the last of my video logs for Pro Tour M15. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll be back with more at the next Pro Tour, and let me know what you like, let me know what you didn't like, and we'll see what we can do. All right, see ya.